Okay. Okay. Okay, we're live. I'll turn the volume up a little bit. That's a little bit. Oh, that's down. Okay, there we go. That's for me so I can hear a little bit better. Man, it's a loud truck. I'm gonna try to mute it when the loud vehicles pass by. I'm gonna try to mute it. Okay, if you're watching this, please share this post. Please share this post. I made a live a little bit earlier on my personal Facebook page, but now hopping on the May 30th Alliance page to make a separate live. We're gonna do our best to try to keep the live to keep audio content, video content posted. Damn, these loud ass trucks! I ain't see them coming. Oh, so 3 of them in a row. I'm sorry, y'all. We're gonna do our best to try to continuously keep content coming onto the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. So after I finish this Facebook live, I will go to Instagram and Twitter and do lives. We'll try to make sure that each live on each social media platform is about a different overall topic, a different overall concept, or about a different overall theme, touching on the things going on. So this video here, please share this video too if you're watching this. On this video here, I just want to sort of speak about the protest that took place on Monday outside of City Hall at the swearing in of the new Alderman and at the ceremony for the outgoing Alderman. I just want to sort of speak on the reasoning that we protested it, the reason that we used the tactics that we used when protesting it, and then I'll try to touch on some of the aftermath that took place from that protest. So on Monday, Rockford swore in the new alderman that they had just been elected. I don't remember the. I know that was 4 black women aldermen that were elected, and that was something that the city's been hanging their hat on as a proof that race relations are being mended or race relations are being addressed in the city. I know. I just say that to say I don't know the specifics of the other aldermen that were brought in. It's been for me personally electoral politics. Electoral politics have not been at the forefront of have not been at the forefront of what it is that we are doing. That's not to say that I don't acknowledge electoral politics as being something that has importance, or I don't acknowledge electoral politics as something that has implications on the things that we're doing. But for too long, there has been a heavy emphasis put on electoral politics and almost a lack of emphasis put on any other type of political actions. And so as they were inside of City Hall celebrating electoral politics, outside of City Hall, I felt that it was only I want to say poetic, but it was only right that outside of City Hall we used a different type of political tactic, and I do believe that protesting is something that is a political. Demonstrations are a political action, just like boycotts are a political action, and protesting campaigns are a political action. Picketing is a political action. Organizing and mobilizing are political actions. And so we did something that we've done regularly. We have a speaker here. This is what the speaker looked like. We have a speaker, and we didn't even have megaphones. We didn't use megaphones on Monday. We had a speaker and we had signs, and we played music at the highest decibel that the speaker would allow, and we put that next to the windows of City Hall as the swearing-in ceremony was taking place. I would like to point out that the reason we could not be inside of City Hall to maybe do something different, or to maybe just use our voices to protest was because City Hall has put an illegal ban on multiple members of the May 30th Alliance for nothing else than protesting, than assembling outside of the building. That is, no one has been assaulted, no laws have been broken on City Hall or inside of City Hall. The ordinances that they have spoken of us violating are ordinances that not only do we not violate the ordinances in the manner in which the ordinances are written, because these ordinances have multiple. It's not as if the ordinance just says you can't protest outside of City Hall, or you can't have a canopy outside City Hall. There's specificities to these ordinances, and there's historical precedents that says that cities have instituted laws and ordinances that they are illegal, or that are in direct confrontation or in direct confliction with constitutional rights that people have, and human rights that people have. And so we exercised our right to protest outside of the building by playing music at a loud decibel, by having signs, and by knocking on the windows to let people inside see the signs. Knocking on a window is maybe the most common thing to do to get somebody's attention. So this idea that knocking on the windows is disorderly conduct is preposterous and ludicrous, which is something that we ended up being charged for, is disorderly conduct. And again, all of these things are filmed. I believe they're on my personal Facebook page, not on the May 30th Alliance page. But I will try to make sure that we get those things transferred over to the May 30th Alliance page. And so that was the manner of the protest. It was two people in the middle of the rain. The swearing in does not even take place on the bottom floor. Only thing that's on the bottom floor is the people who are in attendance because of COVID restrictions. If it wasn't for the COVID restrictions, they wouldn't even have been on the bottom floor. They all would have been on the top floor. And so the actual swearing in ceremony, the actual city council meeting that was taking place, we were too far away removed from it to actually disrupt that. The only thing that was being disrupted was the people who were on the first floor. So the ceremony was still being allowed to go on. Truthfully, the only thing that was being disrupted was the atmosphere, or the energy, or the vibe. It wasn't the process or the procedures that they were going through. It was the fact that when they left out, they had to hear people asking them about Faustin Guaitigo, who was murdered, and who the mayor has chosen, instead of choose a humane tactic, or instead of choosing to deploy the same, instead of speaking about Faustin Guaitigo being murdered, who was murdered in Winnebago County, which is the county that his city resides in. He's not said anything at all about Faustin Guaitigo being murdered. But somehow in Minneapolis, when George Floyd was killed, which is not even has no connection to him, truthfully, he found a way to have a press conference and speak about it and make statements. When Jacob Blake was shot in a city in Kenosha, a city in a different state, he found a way to make a statement. But when Jose Gonzalez Jr. and Tyrus Jones was shot inside of his own city, he just makes a Facebook statement, doesn't decry the actions of the police officers, how he decried the actions of the police officers in the Jacob Blake and the George Floyd situation, does not decry the systemic or systematic issues that led to the shooting of Tyrus Jones and the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr., like how he decried the systematic and systemic issues that led to the 21st century lynching of George Floyd and the attempted murder of Jacob Blake. He did not do those things when these issues touched his city, when these issues began to have political implications on him personally, as opposed to him just being able to pander to black people like he did on May 30th. And so I don't believe that he should be able to have any city council meetings that are not disrupted and these issues are not brought back to him. I don't believe that any of the outgoing aldermen who stood by quietly as Tyrus Jones was shot, who stood by quietly as Denzel Duvant was assaulted and beat, who stood by quietly as protesters had their human and constitutional rights violated throughout the spring and the summer of 2020. I don't think that is right at all that they get to leave office and be celebrated and nobody remind them of the things that they allowed to happen on their watch. Nobody reminds them of the victimization and the traumatization that these police departments enforced while they were elected officials and while they stood by silently and did not raise their voice. So as the people who were leaving office left the building, namely Vanita Hervey and I can't think of what the black guy's name is. Natavius Irvins, or Vanita Hervey and Natavius Irvins. Both of them were asked about their lack of action when it comes to mass incarceration, police terrorism, and racial injustice in the city of Rockford while they were aldermen. And instead of owning up to those actions, instead of saying that they could have done things differently, they chose to be defensive. They chose to have lack of moral integrity, and they chose to try to divert attention or divert the issue that was being raised, and to make the issue be about the protesters and the manner in which that the protest was going on. Instead of Vanita Harvey acknowledging that underneath her watch, black people were systematically ushered in and out of the crooked Winnebago County Jail, that black and brown and poor people were systematically traumatized and victimized by the police department, and she stood by quietly. Instead of acknowledging that and saying that it's things that she could have done differently, it's more that she could have at least spoken out more often, she tries to say that the protesters aren't doing anything, that we should do something differently. When anybody who has been paying attention for the past 12 months know that the needle has moved in this city because of people protesting. The needle has moved in this city because of activists taking to the streets and activists forcing the society of Rockford, Illinois to raise their consciousness higher and to have more awareness when it comes to police terrorism and racial injustice issues. The Illinois passing the police reform bill that they've been calling it. Bill Rose tried to act like that's not what it's being referred to as. Another political hypocrite. That was passed because of people in the streets. That was passed because of mass movements. Even if you look at cities that are doing things like passing anti-protest laws or passing anti-voting laws or laws to try to suppress voting, they're doing those things because of the movement that took place in the streets. They're doing those things because of the protests and the demonstrations that took place all through this nation and even globally last year and continuing into this year. And so for anybody who is in an elected official or ex-elected official to pretend as if protesting and demonstrations and activists and people being in the streets is not helping anything either shows A, that they are completely ignorant of how politics works and their place in politics, and historically the place of protesting in politics, they're ignorant of it and they need to be educated more, or B, they're incompetent and they do know, or they do have heard about it, and they're just too incompetent or don't lack the intellect to be able to connect A and B and C together. They don't understand that after the things that went on in Birmingham in '63 is when there was a civil rights a civil rights act was signed. I might be, using the wrong terminology. Excuse me. After the mass movement in Selma in '65 and the things that was going on, the movements that was going on in '65 in different cities, the protesting and campaigns that was going on in '65 in different cities is when a Voting Rights Act was passed. After a known protester, the most infamous protester maybe, if not in the world, and at least in America, after he was slain, that's when another civil rights act was signed. 8 days after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed is when this act was signed, and it was signed because he was a protesting, because of the things that he had built his life around. So for an elected official to be ignorant or to be too incompetent to understand the interrelation that electoral politics has with protesting just shows a lack of competence to even hold the position in which Vanita Harvey was holding. So to me, that said a lot about why this city, why she was quiet when these things were happening, because she doesn't understand these things. The same thing for Natavius Irvin, a man who bragged about barely being able to read and write. However, he is supposed to, it's in his job duties as an alderman to constantly read and write. But, he thought that because of God, he was given this position, even though he did not lack the tools to properly occupy this position, which has happened too often, where these white power structures, they want the black person who is not competent enough to be in the position, or who does not have the ability to be in the position, to be the one speaking, or to be the one at the forefront, or to be the one holding the position, because that way they don't have to worry about someone who has the that way they don't have to worry about someone who has enough of an understanding. They don't have to worry about somebody who has enough of an understanding to challenge these systems, or to challenge these issues, or to challenge other aldermen. And so so it shouldn't be surprising, to me. It wasn't surprising to me to know that these two people stayed quiet throughout their term as these things took place, as police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustices took place, after seeing how they reacted once leaving office and people were bringing these things to their attention. Secondly, and I've said this multiple times, and I'll continue to say this, I'm not trying to be liked by people. I'm not trying to be run for office in the future or anything like that. So I'm just saying it how it is. I do not believe any of the aldermen who were elected ran on a platform of ending police terrorism, racial injustice, or mass incarceration, or altering the atmosphere of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in Rockford, Illinois, or even in the wards in which they were elected in. And so I'm not, someone who is an elected official, I'm sure that their job is, your job as an elected official is to try to get elected. That's what their job is. So they run on the things in which they believe they can get elected on. We are not out here to get elected. So we are only campaigning, I guess you could say, on the things which matter to us and the things which we believe need to be addressed immediately. And we're not doing it based on how many people will like that we're bringing this up or how many people will agree with the manner in which we're bringing it up. We're bringing it up because it's something that for too long has not been addressed. And so it becomes the responsibility of us as protesters, as activists, to force the incoming alderman to address police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. And that is what we did on Monday. Each one of those aldermen who just came in, their first taste of being an alderman, their first experience or their first event as an elected official will forever be intertwined and connected with police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. And as disgusting and as despicable as it is that these racist cowards or Uncle Tom cowards would weaponize the police on us to have us arrested a day later after us protesting, again, that will always be connected with those aldermen being elected. It will always be history is being written right now, whether the moral coward of a mayor understands it, whether the aldermen who are coming in understand it, whether the police officers understand it, whether you as a community member understand it. We are in a moment where history is being written, and the actions of everybody will be recorded, and the intentions of everybody will be recorded, and where you stood at in this moment in history will be recorded. And so it will be recorded and forever remembered that when people came to protest about police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice at the swearing in of new aldermen in the midst of a movement, not just in the city or in the state, but in the nation, a movement about black liberation, a movement about the ending of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. That is the climate of the nation. It is a movement around these things. Instead of the institution that is the city of Rockford government truthfully addressing those things, instead of the institution that is the police department in Rockford truly addressing those things on that Monday when these new aldermen are coming in, when the mayor is starting a new term, instead of trying to turn over a metaphorical new leaf, they continued in the same actions again and had people arrested, and they didn't even have the moral fiber or the backbone to arrest people then that day. They waited to the middle of the night the next night to do it, continuing in the cowardice footsteps that they've already laid for their over the past 12 months. But that will forever be intertwined with these people. It will forever be remembered that on the day that they were sworn in, we protested. There's video footage of it. The video footage is documented. It will stay forever. It will forever be remembered that they had us arrested for protesting these things. Forever. And this moment is bigger than a lot of these aldermen. This moment is bigger than a lot of these. This moment is bigger than all the aldermen. This moment is bigger than the mayor. This moment is bigger than me, myself. I tell people all the time, this isn't about whether you like me or you don't like me or you like the way I deliver the message or the way somebody else delivers the message. It's about the message. It's about the movement. It's about the issues. It's not about personalities. And that goes the same for the activists as it goes for the politicians and the other elected officials. So, this is just, I'm just trying to give some of the thought process and some of the reasoning and the purposes of the protest on Monday outside of City Hall, because I don't want, for far too often, what has happened is that narratives have been sculpted and created by people who have not taken the time to find out why these things are going on, have not taken the time to find out the method and the reasons that the methods being used. They have not taken time to find out the reasoning for the methods being used. Too often the narrative is painted by people who don't understand protesting. Too often the narrative is painted by people who don't understand demonstrations or don't understand this movement. Too often the narrative is painted by people who have duplicitous motives for the manner in which they're painting the narrative. People who have conflicts of interest as they're painting the narratives. People who it behooves them to paint the narrative and to put the people protesting in a negative light. It behooves them to paint the narrative and put me in a negative light. It behooves them to paint the narrative and put the movement in a negative light and say, well, it should be getting done this way or it should be getting done that way. Not because they truthfully believe it should be getting done this way or that way, but because they believe that the potency it will be less if it's getting done this way or that way, because they believe that if it's being done a different way, it will be less likely that it can succeed, and it'll be less likely that the things that are trying to be achieved will be achieved. They are trying to when people talk about using different tactics a lot of times, or different methods or different language, they are trying to dilute the power of the protest. They are trying to dilute the effectiveness of it. And again, protesting and demonstrations is not always about making someone agree with you. It's not always about making someone change their mind. It's about making people who, speaking for the May 30th Alliance in this moment, it's about making people who don't know that these issues are going on, making them aware to these issues. And so the question stops being, what can you do that more people will be okay with, or what can you do that more people will like? And the question becomes, what can you do to get more people to pay attention? What can you do to get more people to be aware? What can you do to get more people to be conscious of these things? And it doesn't matter if in their awareness or in their them becoming conscious, whether they like you or whether they agree with you. It matters that now they know this is happening. Now it's been brought to their attention that it's happening. And I've used this metaphor multiple times. It's no different than, what we're doing is no different than when you go through your whole life, you never notice a certain car. You never think about this car. And then your friend get the car and you see the car, and you ride around with your friend in the car, and now your friend got that car, and then the next time you driving, you see that car, you start seeing that car places. Or next time you sitting outside your house, you start seeing that same type of make and model of car drive by. And it's not as if more people have the car now. It's just that you're now aware of that specific car. Your consciousness has been heightened to notice that specific car. And that is what we're doing right now as the May 30th Alliance. That is what we are, me, myself, as an activist, as part of the May 30th Alliance, an organizer that's part of a member of the May 30th Alliance. What I am doing, and what we are doing, and what our belief is, and what our organizational ideology is that we are trying to get people to notice the car. We are trying to get people to see the car. We are trying to get people to notice when these acts of state-sanctioned violence take place. And we believe that the more people notice those things, the more people will begin to wake up. The more often people notice these things, the more amounts of people that will begin to wake up. As the people who are noticing it increases, and as how often they notice it increases, the amount of people who notice it will increase. And then in the midst of that, we will start getting to a place where we can genuinely start solving some of these issues and start finding some answers. But right now, we can't get to the answers because some of the people who need to hear the question have not heard the question yet. Some of the people who need to know about the issue do not know about the issue yet. Some of the people who have those answers have not had the right people asking them the question, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so I believe that we're years down the line of truthfully, in the city of Rockford at least, addressing this issue and changing parts of this issue. We won't, until we have a mayor that is comfortable enough in his morality or comfortable enough, I guess, in his standing politically to be able to say the names of the victims, we will get no closer to not having any victims. This idea that The mayor of a city can put out a Facebook statement after somebody has been shot in the streets is preposterous. It would never happen in Chicago. It would never happen in New York City. It would never happen in LA. Not at least during the time period in which we are in right now. Lori Lightfoot would have been dealing with all types of a mess if she wouldn't have any press conferences after Adam Toledo was shot. If when they released the video footage, she didn't have any press conferences. And that's not to say that, you know, she couldn't have the way she handled it was perfect, or the way that it was handled there was perfect. It's just to say that is how you can tell how far behind we truthfully are, is that this mayor has only put out Facebook statements about people being shot down in the streets. He doesn't even have the moral integrity to hold a press conference and to answer questions from the media. And so we are very far away from solving these issues, and these issues won't be solved, won't be addressed properly if there's not pressure put onto the mayor, if there's not pressure put onto the alderman, if it's not pressure put onto the city of Rockford government and city hall, if it's not pressure being put onto business owners, if it's not pressure being put onto everyday people that says if you don't address these issues, business as usual will never return here. If you do not address these issues, peace will never truthfully return here. Because there's never been any kind of truthful peace in black communities and in poor and working class communities and brown communities. There's never been any true justice in these communities. And so I believe that we're in a place now where for far too long the oppressed are the only people that are feeling the weight of this burden. The weight of the burden of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. And I think that it is now time for us to sort of shift who feels the weight of that burden, and shift where the weight of that burden is placed. And when Tyrus Jones' family has 100% of the burden placed on them of police oppression and police terrorism and mass incarceration and racial injustice, it becomes incumbent upon the May 30th Alliance to take 10% of that burden, or 10% of that weight that they feel, and to put it on the city hall by staying outside of city hall. Or to put it on the city hall by writing chalk outside of city hall, or to put it on to city hall and put it on to the mayor by putting a canopy up behind city wall, or to stay behind city hall for a large amount of days, or for a bunch of days consecutively. The same thing when 100% of police terrorism, the weight of the burden of police terrorism is coming down on Denzel Duvant and the family of Denzel Duvant. It becomes incumbent upon the May 30th Alliance to take 15 or 20% of that weight, or however much of that weight of that burden, and shift it to the city of Rockford, and shift it to the police department through occupying City Hall, through making signs of Denzel Duvant's face and putting them in places that make people uncomfortable to have to pass through, putting them in places that make that force people to have conversations in their cars, or have conversations in the groups of people that they're moving around with. You know, it becomes incumbent upon us to do that. The same thing when Jose Gonzalez Jr. is shot by the Rockford Police Department, and 100% of that burden, the weight of that burden, is on his family. It becomes incumbent upon the May 30th Alliance to shift 10 or 15% of that to City Hall by putting chalk on City Hall, or shift 10 to 15% of that by marching through the streets and slowing down traffic. And the same thing when Faustin Guaitio was murdered by the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies, and 100% of the police terrorism and racial injustice is 100% of the weight of that burden is coming down on his family. It becomes incumbent upon us to try to shift 10 to 15% of the weight of that burden to the Winnebago County Administration Building, to Winnebago County Board Chairman Chiarelli. That becomes our duty as community members. Because if we don't, then one day that burden will come down on us, and there will be nobody there to try to shift that weight. If we don't, every year that we don't, or every time that we don't, that weight becomes harder and harder. That burden becomes heavier and heavier, and that shifting that weight becomes something that's more and more difficult to do. It's more difficult right now for us to try to get to solutions to these problems in 2021 than it may have been in 2017 or 2015 because of yeah, there's more of an awareness in the nation about these things, but there's also more of a complacency in the city about these things because of how many people it's happened to when there's been no justice given, because of how many times this has happened and people have been lethargic to it, and because now people feel as if it's nothing they can do. I hear it all the time from middle-aged or older black people who say, oh, it's been like this for so long, it's nothing you can do, or you protesting, it's not going to do nothing, it's not changing nothing. And I know a lot of the reason that they feel that way is because they've never seen anything be changed, and a lot of the reason that they haven't seen anything be changed is because of the lack of doing what needs to be done to shift that burden. And once we get to a place where as a community it becomes part of our process, just like it's part of, just like when there's an officer-involved shooting and the process becomes for them to enact the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force. From now on, when it's an officer-involved shooting, just like the task force is activated, the May 30th Alliance will be activated. And do I wish we had 20, 30, 50 people so that way, we could have bigger numbers with doing some of these things? I wish it was more people participating in the occupation and some of the other demonstrations that have taken place. Of course I do. Of course we do as an organization. But I also know that this is something that the organization hasn't even been put in place for a year. This is this specific iteration of this movement hasn't even been going on in Rockford for a full year. We had the occupation has not been going on in Rockford for a full year, and Rome wasn't built in a day, and the civil rights movement didn't take place in a day or in a week or in a month or in a year. These things, I don't have any type of false beliefs that we are at some type of end goal, or that we are going to be the organization or the people that are going to change things. I believe 100% that we're just a spark. I believe that there's teenagers, 16, 15, 17, 18-year-olds, whatever, younger generation. I'm 29, a generation younger than me that are watching these things and that need to see these things take place in this manner, with this type of attitude, with this type of not backing down, with this type of uncompromising mentality, so that way when it becomes time for them to take up the mantle, they know to not be uncompromising. They know to not yield to these power structures, and they know that these things can be done. They know that, and too, it becomes incumbent upon us to make sure that they don't have to start farther back than we're starting at, that to make sure that they don't have a deeper hole to try to dig out of. And so we have to continue to move forward. Nothing could be worse than us stopping right here. Nothing could be worse than us trying to go back and regroup. We have to continue to push forward. We have to continue to stay, to keep this exact same level of pressure on these systems, on these institutions, and then to increase it. We cannot afford any backsteps. We cannot afford any decreasing of the pressure. No matter what type of repression or what type of forms of repression come down, we have to understand that those forms of repression are coming down not because we're being unsuccessful, but because we are being successful, and they're in fear of what continued success will look like. City Market doesn't have extra permit parameters because we failed last year, because the protest didn't work last year. They have it because we were successful last year. They didn't arrest me and Ari and issue warrants because we failed in trying to disrupt the ceremony for the incoming alderman and outgoing alderman. They arrested us because we were successful. They put an arrest warrant out because we were successful. They didn't tear down the canopy and illegally force us to no longer be in the back because we were unsuccessful in the occupation. They did it because this occupation was successful, and they were trying to find a new tactic to deploy to make it become unsuccessful. And those tactics only work if you stop. Those tactics only work if you regress, if you allow that to be a hindrance. And so we can't allow those things to be hindrances. We can't allow false arrest to be hindrances. Can't allow assaults or racist intimidation tactics to be hindrances, weaponizing of police to be hindrances, or microaggressions to be hindrances. Is too many young people that are watching and that will watch and that will follow in the footsteps that are laid. And if in those footsteps they see fear, or in those footsteps they see 10 steps forward leading to 20 steps backwards, that will be the same routes that they take. And so the same way Dr. King and Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael and the Panthers and all types of black revolutionaries before me and before us and revolutionary organizations, whether they be black, white, or other, before us have continued forward in the face of police terrorism, in the face of state-sanctioned violence, in the face of false arrest. It's incumbent upon us to keep forward and to press forward, so that way whatever the next organization is after the May 30th Alliance knows to keep forward and to press forward after those things. So after, I guess, let me try to wrap up the overall theme of this, which was the protest on Monday outside of City Hall during the swearing-in ceremony. So everybody goes, as the swearing-in ceremony is finished, everybody's family goes home. Everybody goes home safely. Nobody's family is harmed. Nobody's car is harmed. The City Hall is still standing. Everybody was okay. However, and the police were here. The police came in a paddy wagon. It was police officers already inside of City Hall, because police officers always come to the City Hall, City Council meeting. So if what was being done was of such a detriment to the community, we could have been arrested right there, but instead they issued an arrest warrant Tuesday. And instead of coming and getting us Tuesday morning during broad day, or Tuesday afternoon, or even Tuesday evening when we were at the Food Truck Tuesdays live streaming and everybody could see where we were at, they waited until the middle of the night, like not even just moral cowards, just like as complete cowards, waited to the middle of the night in an attempt to try to take all the stuff, in attempts to try to take all the things that we keep at City Hall, to try to steal the items at City Hall. They arrested me and Ari in the middle of the night, separate times. Me while I was walking to the mobile gas station at 9 o'clock at night. Ari while he was outside of City Hall at 2 in the morning, and charged us with disorderly conduct for protesting this bourgeois swearing-in ceremony. And so now we have, both have court coming up soon to face and deal with those charges, among the other charges that we still have, are still facing. All of these charges being from protesting, all of these charges being political charges, being politically motivated, not motivated by the safety of the community or the safety of the city, or not motivated by keeping any individual safer, only motivated by political purposes and political reasoning. So that's just another arrest to add on to those. And so Leslie. Yes, ma'am. And so again, okay, so that is sort of where we stand with all of these things. And so like I said, I also wanted to go through, try to do a wrapping up of speaking about what happened. I want to try to do the best that we can to circumvent any false narratives being put out. And I know a lot of people seen the things that took place this week, whether it be the chalk that was written on some of the different public sidewalks in front of different storefronts, or whether it be the mega. Hey, how you doing? Really? Oh yeah, Chris, yeah, that's my yeah. Oh, okay, it's nice to meet you. I'm still here. Yes, yeah, I'm good. It's warming up. It's easy out here. But no, I'm okay. It's nice to meet you in person.
I told you when I come through here I was gonna see
You did. It's good to meet you in person. Thank you. You too, man. And so, so that's where we are. That's where we stand with these things. Nobody was out here protesting for any kind of negative reasons. Nobody's out here protesting and doing all of these things for anything negative. People are doing these things for the liberation of people, for the freedom of people, even for people who don't understand that they are that they have a lack of liberation, or a lack of freedom, or a lack of liberties. All right. I got one on my personal page. I got one on the Facebook page. Got to get one on Twitter and Instagram. So don't want to get burnt out doing all this talking. So I'm end this live. Please share this. like the Facebook page, like the May 30th Alliance Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Like all the stuff we got on Instagram. Retweet everything we got on Twitter. Like all the posts we got on Facebook. What up? You can donate to the May 30th Alliance at PayPal. On PayPal, you can donate to the May 30th Alliance at protonmail.com. That's the May 30th Alliance at protonmail.com. I think Venmo is the same thing as May 30th Alliance at protonmail.com. I think Venmo do the emails. I got to look at that again. And then at Cash App, you can donate. Please donate at $ May 30th Alliance or Cash App sign May 30th Alliance. Again, donate at the $ May 30th Alliance, Cash App sign May 30th Alliance. Share this video. Go back, share all the other videos. If you aren't informed about the things that's going on, please go through the Facebook page, Twitter pages, Instagram pages, and get informed. Come down to City Hall. Come down to Say Their Name Square. You can leave flowers and candles at the memorials for the people who have been lost their lives to police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice down here. And I'll be doing another one of these at least tomorrow. I don't know if I get a chance to do another one this evening. I'll make sure to try to share all our links. Remember, you can find us on anywhere that podcasts are available. Well, we're not on Apple. Not on Apple right now yet. But we should be soon. Soon, anywhere podcasts are available. Right now, you can definitely find us on Spotify and Pocket Cast. And there's one other one, May 30th Alliance. We got one episode up right now. We're going to have more to come soon. All right, share this video. We outside.